Sheena Ringo, Shoso Strip, we are on to the very last song, Izonsho, which is translated as I am an addict, according to the official translation. Yes, we've got all the way to the end of this album, and before we jump in to the final song on the album, the big finale of this rather intriguing second album from Sheena Ringo, I actually have a more important question I need to ask you, Sheena Ringo fans, before I go any further, which is, I'm not sure which album I'm going to do next because obviously we're going track by track through all the albums. Now, I have it on good authority from you guys, the fans, that the next album, chronologically, is a cover album. But then again, I also know that a lot of people refer to the first three original music albums from Sheena Ringo like they're a trilogy. And it does seem that they paint a really interesting picture of how her journey goes. Now, either way, I am intending to do all the albums. So I'm kind of thinking if I go straight on to the third album and skip the cover album, I will come back to the cover album later. But here's the thing. I really want you guys to let me know because ultimately what I want to do is I want to hear how she grows as an artist. That's what I'm really excited about on this journey. This is why I tend to come back to special live versions and re-recordings and B-sides and remixes. I tend to come back to all that stuff once I finish the entire discography because of the fact that what really I want to know first of all is the chronological development of the songwriter. Now, obviously, Sheena Ringo is very famous for doing alternate versions of songs, so I imagine her covers are probably going to be quite intriguing as well. So there's probably a lot of artistic quality in there, but in my heart, I feel like I should move on to the third album and come back around to the cover album at the end once I've got through her original material. But I want you guys to tell me what you think. Because yeah, that's how I feel about it. I feel excited to move on to the third album, but you guys might think otherwise. If you think it's essential listening to listen to the cover album first, let me know. If you think it's okay to come back to that at the end and just go through the original material first of all, let me know. Either way, I will be reading the comments on that. But here we are. Most importantly, to listen to the end of this album first of all. And you know what? Looking at it, this has been a really intriguing album. Musai Moratorium, the debut album, really grabbed me. I think it was the kind of the demonstration of what for me a perfect debut album should be like. I mean, as much as you can have a perfect version of something that is, you know, in its own way supposed to show the individual qualities of each artist, but she did all the things you'd want from that. You know, it was an honest, expressive album that felt like it came from an urgent place of real feelings. There was a range of different sounds on there. There was experimentation, there was musicianship galore, and it was raw, but it was something really intriguing. For me, the second album, Shoso Strip, has been a bit of a mixed bag. I think that it's generally still kept all the things that I loved about that first album, in that we've got some really interesting writing. We've got some grand songs that really, I mean, if anything, the hits on this, you know, the singles are even more impressive. You know, I feel like we're looking at songs like Gips. I mean, Gips is fantastic. Crime and Punishment is great as well. Identity was quite a surprise. But you got that, and then obviously we just came out of like Instinct as well. The singles on this album feel really strong, but I would say the tracks in between for me have been a bit more of a mixed bag. I think there's been a lot of use of production, which it's a production that's very much of its time. You know, so much of the production on this album has sounded like the kind of high compression, very playful sort of production that we were getting in Japanese music around about the turn of the millennium. It's got a lot of things that are very much of the time. And yes, they are experimentally used, but I feel like for all the experimentation, the results haven't quite been as immediately like, oh my God, I've got to come back round to that and listen to that again, as they were with the first album. So at the moment, I don't know. It's like you have to live with an album to really properly rank it. But I'm feeling a little bit more like Musai Moratorium is probably the one that's coming off a little bit stronger in my memory. But I guess we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to have to come back around to them and I'll let you know in a few months or a year's time how I feel about that. But hey, we haven't finished this album yet. Just that's the layup. That's where we stand on this. Definitely an album that feels like it's got two different sessions worth of stuff. You know, itself, yeah, probably due to that. Obviously, she was checked into hospital during the time this album, or between these two albums. So you know, we got the more produced songs, and then we got the more raw songs. It's been a really intriguing experience. But the last song is always important on an album. Now, we ended Musai Moratorium with a wonderfully almost playfully cheeky end. It was an ending that just kind of wonderfully put a lovely cap on the whole experience. Here we've got a much longer song. We're coming out of Instinct, which is a song that has a sort of good sense of pace, good sense of funk. It's not the most dramatic or heavy song. It's just a really impressively impactful song. And we're coming into Inzonsho. I did pronounce it Inzonsho. We're coming into that as the final song. Let's see what we get. And just a reminder, guys, remember, everything I said at the beginning, that's still true. Leave in your comments which one you want me to do next. Whether you want me to come around to the cover album after I've done the mainline albums, or whether you want me to do that in chronological order first before we get on to the next lot. But anyway, let's just jump in on this. I'm really excited to see how this album ends. It's been quite an experience, and I'm eager to listen to more. I'm eager to see what comes next with her. But let's have a little listen to this album first of all. That is the sound of my volume changing, don't worry. Let's go. Loving little bubble sounds there. A little meow sound in the background. The bass to one side's a really classic sort of 60s move. I'm loving the chord spacings in this. It's got that ever so classic kind of melody first approach, but I love the way the song's just kind of beautifully. Is that like a bass chord? It's like somewhere between a keyboard and a bass chord. She loves her rolled R's. Okay, bridge time. Oh, more chorus, I think. This is real driving off into the sunset kind of music. Okay, bridge can make or break a song. Back to verse. Is that sound again? Okay, we're going for the old instrumental play out. This song is just like a groove. Just something about the piano and the guitar playing. This is classic old school J-pop kind of. I just love these long instrumental bits where just the sound wraps around your ears. Bass is gonna hold station. I can do another 20 minutes, it's fine. We're not done yet. Go on, end with the distortion. Please end with the distortion. I think we're going to fade out. I love how the strange... Sounds like a pigeon cooing. There's like the strange little sounds diving in. It didn't fade out properly. It just kind of ended suddenly. Okay, right. Yeah, that honestly, these people here, like, you know how like a YouTube video you can see where the most attention was from people? I get it, but I also don't get it, because I tell you what, I'm going to say something that might seem a little bit out of character for me, given that I'm usually very much anti to fade out. I like songs that have a lot of progression. All of these things that I always say. For me, that was a near perfect album ending. Let me explain why. Almost every rule has an exception. And when it comes to a fade out, the one type of fade out I'll accept is, first of all, if you're fading out a long section like this, like a sort of repeated, almost ad-libbed section where it's just kind of looping round and around and around, but only if you give that section time to breathe. Don't just sort of get into, oh, here's the bit that loops round, oh, and it's gone. So no, you've got to make it clear to the listener that this bit, if you didn't fade it out, it would go on forever. You've got to make the listener aware of the fact that this is a section of music that could just play forever. We have to fade it out. It's the only way. And that, for me, is exactly what this so beautifully does. And that's also something that you can only really do at the end of an album. Because if you don't do that at the end of an album, then it kind of makes your album seem a little bit disjointed. Like the next song's going to turn up like, oh, okay, I guess I'll begin now. You know, it's like you can do that at the end of an album. You can't really do it almost anywhere else. So yes, I know I typically hate fade out songs, but this is that one example when you can do it, when it does work, and in my opinion, she's done it perfectly here. Now, I've critiqued other songs on this album that I didn't think had very good fade outs. This, for me, chef's kiss, perfect fade out. Absolutely love this. But let's talk a little bit more about the song. The reason I'm focusing so much on the ending is because that's what this is. This is the final song on the album. This is how you cap off the album. But what I really enjoyed about this as a general is that this, again, follows a formula that we have seen in some of the earlier songs. You know, I keep on bringing up things like Gips and Crime and Punishment, but those are two very prime examples of this, where she does this... process of having a verse that very much has kind of got a bit of a spaced out, strange feeling. The sounds are kind of a little bit a little bit odd, a little bit unnerving in places, a little bit uncertain, and then everything just comes crashing in with that signature, slightly tinny sounding, distorted drum kit, and then you get the big jangling guitar kind of chorus. This is something that she's done a few times on this album, and there's nothing wrong with repeating something if it works, and especially if you're adding a little bit of individual character to each one of those examples, which I think she's added enough character to make all those songs really distinct from each other. But this is certainly a technique she's repeated a couple of times in this album. This particular song, though, it does that again, but it does it in a way that I think works because, first of all, in the verse, have a little listen to how the verse is layered. You got like that electric piano, you've got the guitar to one side, you've got the weird sort of whoop, 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 kind of like little bubbling noises, and then eventually when the bass comes in, it's all way over to one side. Again, kind of an unnerving, slightly everything's kind of right, but it's also not kind of right. Do you know, it reminds me a lot of, I think it was primarily in the 60s. This was true on a lot of Beatles records, ironically, because, I mean, this is way before my time, obviously, but I remember this from hearing a lot of old originals, Beatles records. Is, of course, the thing is that when stereo first came in, the idea that music doesn't have to be mono, that it has to be stereo, left and right, initially a lot of recordings just had everything hard panned, so like the bass is entirely on the left, the drums are entirely on the right, and so basically you could switch off one of the speakers and just have, oh, this is the song but it's only vocals and guitar, oh, and then you switch speaker and it's like, oh, this is a song but it's only bass and drums. You know, sounds were hard panned. And that's what the intro to this sounds like. It sounds like there's a little bit of that hard panning, where the instruments are all very conspicuously on one side or on the other, not really mixed in, with exception to that central keyboard and the vocals. It's got this wonderfully eerie, old school feeling, but of course that eventually gives way to the chorus. And tonally, the sound of her voice, the rasp of her voice, the sound of the guitars, everything about this, it really feels tonally, timbre-wise, a lot like, as I say, things like Gips, Crime and Punishment. They have a similar timbre, but the mood, the tone is totally different. Here, this is a song that's got a little bit more of a kind of a, hey, that's the way it is kind of vibe, whereas we were at the end of the last album, we were getting sedated. On this album, we're going off on much more of a, well, here it is kind of thing. As I say, driving off into the sunset is the vibe that the music gives, at least. Now, I will say that as a result, this is a song that was able to be much longer because it's giving you that kind of chilled out, nostalgic vibe. It's not so urgent. It's not so much rushing. It's a song that kind of has a feeling of, dare I say, it feels like it's accepting of its, it's a song that's got a sort of degree of acceptance and nostalgia to it. Now, I wanted to check this particular thing because, of course, the first song was called I Am a Liar, and I know that Sheena Ringo has a habit of songs referencing each other. So to finish on I'm an addict, I kind of see that. And also as well, the idea of I'm an addict, similar to like I say, the sedation theme at the end of Musai Moratorium. I feel like this song is almost mirroring both the beginning of the album, but also mirroring the end of the last album. It feels like there's a sort of a thematic link between these three songs that kind of carries through. And I said before, she's still at an age during this album, where she's still in that kind of angsty, teens, early 20s period of her life, where she's obviously moved to a big city, moved into a very interesting industry where there's a lot of pressures, a lot of things going on, her life probably changing very quickly due to even the fame from Musai Moratorium, let alone this album. There's all these things happening around her, and at the same time, humans still have to deal with human stuff. You still have to deal with relationships, with people, with the way that you interact with those around you, the way you deal with your own emotions. And the core theme that's run through these two albums, although Musai Moratorium had much more of a focus on the world is changing around me, and it was very, she was looking at other people a lot more. She was talking about herself, but she was looking at other people a lot on Musai Moratorium and sort of lamenting the state of the things around her and how she reacted to that. This album feels much more like it's introvertedly looking at herself. Like almost all the songs here seem to have a focus on how she feels about herself, about her place in this world. And not so much the world, but into how she interacts with other people, as in like relationships, personal kind of things. So this song, again, personal relationships, that's the theme. Love, the sort of stranglehold of being emotionally dependent on someone. This kind of theme again is very much drawn into it. And as I say, that's kind of one of the reasons why people at this age do write often very charged and very emotionally interesting songs, and often very earnest. I mean, the funny thing is when you look at a lot of songs written by people around about this age, and I've said this before, you could look at them as like Oji-san. You could look at it as like an old man and go, in reality, it's like, whatever she's going through emotionally to make her write this song, there's probably a hell of a lot more things coming in the rest of your life than that. And, but there's something very interesting about how people at this kind of age express the rawness of emotion, because a lot of the emotions they're experiencing are very heightened to them. And people, when they get older, are kind of more numb to these experiences because you have more perspective on them. Whereas everything is much more crashingly urgent when you're this age. So it's funny because like a lot of people have said in the comments, every time there's a really interesting song from Sheena Ringo in these first couple of albums, people have said to me stuff like, oh, and it's amazing that she wrote that given that she was 17, 18. And there's part of me which thinks that it's like, no, that's the right age to be writing that. Because everything that you may gain with experience, you lose in that raw, wide-eyed, seeing things without anything but raw perspective kind of way of looking at the world. And this is not to take anything away from her, but it's to say that she's utilized that phase in her life so well. And that's why I'm kind of excited about the third album, if that's the one we do next, because everything I've read, I haven't heard any of it yet, but everything I've read suggests that that album is both the high point in musical experimentation and that kind of expression maybe of the internal monologue. I really think that she's done something with this album that I think is genuinely... I love this phase in her life. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really intrigued to see how I feel when we do get onto the later albums. Because this phase, and it seems like something so powerful about her, is the maturity with which she conveys potentially slightly immature, or should we say slightly juvenile emotional struggles. And again, I don't know, because some people are reading us on subtitles. I don't know how the word juvenile is going to get translated. But I mean, the kind of the emotional struggles that you have as a young person that are those things I talked about earlier. So yeah, I feel like we are listening to a prime time in an extremely talented young woman's life. And I'm really excited to see what she created after this. Genuinely really excited to see what she created after this. As an album, I feel like this probably has more distinct high points than Mozai Moratorium. I think the best songs on this are probably better than the best songs in Mozai Moratorium. I do think that Mozai Moratorium made for a more compelling total listen. As an album to sit down from beginning to end, I think at the moment that would still be my go-to. But yeah, this was lovely. And the fact that it played out as it did, just let the music run. It just let it roll, and you had that it wasn't like there was some guitar solo where you're just listening to someone's solo. It's like, nah, the guitar was soloing a little bit over here. We got all these keyboard sounds happening over here. It just became this beautiful swell of gorgeous sounds just playing around, just jamming as the song sort of went on. And that's a great way to end a song. Reminds me a little bit of there's more compressed versions of that. You think of I mean, in a weird way, I think a lot of Western people would probably think of things like Hotel California by the Eagles. Obviously, that was a guitar solo, but again, playing off on an instrumental that just kind of keeps the mood going and just sort of like fades away. I mean, although that was a solo, that kind of has a similar thing to this, just maintaining the atmosphere and giving you the feeling that this could go on forever. So just let it play out for a few minutes, and then we'll just fade it down. But there's other things as well, like, a very different song, More by Otsukarai, one of my favourite endings to a song, that one. Although that doesn't fade out, it does a similar thing where it just kind of goes on, and just like the instruments, just things layer up. And there's something very powerful about songs that end like this. And as a way of ending an album, I absolutely adored this. Anyway, I've talked a lot about this. We're nearly up to 25 minutes for a reaction, but this was really cool. So anyway, as always, get in the comments, let me know what you think, and until I hopefully see you very soon for the next one of these. For now, ciao, ciao.